Good morning, everyone. How are you guys feeling today? Well rested from last night? Okay, we found out yesterday that rest must be intentional. Okay, I want to thank the executive director for allowing us to present today, and also all of the staff at Fit4You. My name is Theresa Jones, as you know, and this is Elder Scott. And he's been doing rest for many years. When I first came to the camp, he did rest, and I was very impressed with the information. I started to implement some of the things that he taught, and then I started to do the rest principle, and then I've just been very interested in getting rest and sleep and presenting.
And Theresa came right along and took it right to another level. I heard somebody out there sound like they sarcastically said that they got their rest last night. Did I hear that? A little sarcasm in the expression? How many people are really getting their rest every night?
Good.
I see 2 hands, 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I suspected that. I know it's very difficult even for us to get our rest up here. Now, we are trying to change the culture. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, you see we had something on sleep yesterday. We're having something on sleep today. It's been emphasized from the beginning. So it is extremely important. Okay, so we need to really focus on rest. As a matter of fact, we're going to try to focus not just on the one aspect of rest, sleep, but other aspects of rest also as we continue today to present. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rest must be intentional. It must be done on purpose. It must be deliberate. And Dr. Peterson talked yesterday about talking to our bodies and telling it what we want it to do. Sleep is not an option. Exercise, Faye always tells us, exercise is not an option. Well, sleep is not an option. It is a biological necessity. It's the most effective thing that you can do to reset your brain and your body, and we learned that yesterday. Some people look at it as a sign of laziness or a lack of willpower. I know that there are some stars like P. Diddy, he sleeps 1 hour per day. And some people, frown on sleep, but it is a means to intelligence, strength, achievement, and success. And a lot of what we're talking about today is going to be based on the book, Sleeping Your Way to the Top. And we want to give credit to those authors. Insufficient sleep is a public health problem. 50 to 70 million United States adults have chronic sleep disorders, according to the CDC, and they suffer from hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, depression, obesity, cancer, increased death, and just an overall reduction in the quality of life. So why is rest necessary for optimal health? Well, in one day, the average heart beats 110,000 times. The blood runs through millions of miles of arteries, veins, and capillaries. We breathe 28,000 times. We move major muscles hundreds of times, and we operate 15 to 20 billion brain cells. And those of us that have our Fitbit and are doing our steps, we're walking well over 10,000 steps per day. So we need our rest. We're not going to spend too much time on the diseases because Dr. Peterson really did a great job with those yesterday. Amen. But sleep studies have found that people who sleep less than 5 hours per night are 2.5 times more likely to be diabetic. And overall, persons that get less than 5 hours per night have a 15% greater risk of dying of heart disease. And these are staggering statistics. The Canadian Obesity Network has also included the assessment of sleep in patients that physicians, when they're assessing patients, they're asking their physicians to also include an assessment of sleep. And when patients with sleep disorders are assessed, they're also adding depression as part of the assessment because they feel that when patients that have a sleep disorder are develop depression as well. So it really comes down to the first health principle of creation health, which is choice, and the first step toward improving your well-being before you can achieve any positive results. We must choose to do so, and we must make a conscious decision to rest.
At this time, we're going to just take a little break for prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity to look into one of your natural remedies, sleep, the most important remedy of them all, along with the one that says trust in divine power. Both of them are really kind of talking about rest. When we trust, we can rest. When we sleep, we can have a better life. We can have more intelligence, as was brought out, better emotional intelligence and everything. We thank you. We ask that you would be with us and help us to really take sleep seriously. We thank you. We lift you up. We magnify your name. And we ask it in the worthy name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
In Exodus 22, it states in the Bible in verses 26 and 27. Now, follow along with this and try to reason it out here. We have a statement here, and God is speaking. And it says, if you take your neighbor's cloak, back in this time frame, you had people who were poor, and all they had was the cloak that they wore and that they slept in at night. It was for them to stay warm when they were sleeping. And it says here that the poor person would go to someone who would lend them money, and they would hold the cloak as security. And in verse 27, it goes on to say, because that cloak is the only covering, it says that it should be returned by the time the sun sets. It says, what else can they sleep in? When they cry out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. Now, I'm sure that you have, as I have heard, that if something is mentioned in the Bible, it's important. Because there are a whole lot of things that could have been mentioned in the Bible that are not. This is mentioned. It's talking about sleep, and it's saying that God is compassionate, and he will hear if someone cries out if they're mistreated and they didn't give their cloak back by the time the sun set. So this gives us an indication of the time God intends for us to go to sleep, and is telling us how serious God is about sleep and how important it is to him for us to get the amount of sleep we should get. And in Genesis 28, I'm sure most of us are familiar with the story of Jacob's ladder. Well, this is the story here that starting off talking about the dream that he had when he saw that ladder. And it said he got to this certain place, and he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head. I guess you might say a stone. I'm trying to find the softest pillow I can find. But they roughed it, okay? They roughed it out. They lived in the rough, and they. But anyhow, he probably had, something he put over the stone. I'm just trying to, put a little imagination in here. Like something he folded up that he had with him, maybe put over the stone. But anyhow, the stone was to prop his head up, to support him. He put it under his head and laid down to sleep. And this was because when he got there, it was time. The sun had set, all right? Now, you can use nature to figure out a lot of things that we should be doing and how we should be living, We are not nocturnal creatures, okay? We are like the birds. We actually should be going to sleep soon after the sun sets. They go to sleep a little before. The rooster. If you have ever lived anywhere near a rooster and how he crows early in the morning and he also crows in the evening, just about the time the sun is setting. Those are the little indicators for us, okay? Proverbs 3:24. This is more or less letting us know that if we put our dependence on God, in God, if we look to him for help, and if we look to him to protect us, and we look to him as being our creator, and we're obedient to his commands, and we want to do what's pleasing in his sight, this verse is telling us what will happen. It says, when you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you trust in God, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sleep. So don't be afraid of the things that will cause us to be afraid. You know, like the desolation of the wicked and different things that, violence and things that could happen. And, you know, we don't need to worry about those things. We need to focus on our Creator, focus on God, and let him, as his promises told us in various places in the Bible, let's depend on his promises. In 2 Timothy verse 1:7, it says, God has not given us the spirit of fear. You know, fear and anxiety and worry are the things that keep a lot of us up at night. So God has not given us that spirit, but he's given us power and love and a sound mind. And the love that he gives us and the power, it's more or less letting us know that the love that we have and the power that we might have from God should be manifested in love. And here's another text of scripture that we can use it and quote it, because this is Philippians 4:6, 7, and 8. It's a lot different from the way it's worded in the King James Version, but I like this translation a lot better as far as explanation is concerned. It says, don't worry about anything. Okay, worry, that's causing a lot of sleep deprivation. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need. You know, Theresa mentioned a little while ago about what Dr. Peterson said about talk to yourself. Tell your body what you want it to do. So this is more or less letting us know. Tell God what you need. So when you talk to your body and tell you what you want it to do, pray and ask God to make it happen. Okay. Then a little more here. I want to finish out this, because this is the mindset that we need to have in order to get over the fear that some of us have and the worrying that some of us have. It says, then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true, what is honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things like this that are excellent and worthy of praise. In other words, have a positive frame of mind. Don't dwell upon the things that we see happening on the news on a constant basis. You know, dwell upon, meditate upon the Word of God, and things will go a lot better for us in our lives, and it will help us to be refreshed and better able to sleep at night. Regularity in eating and sleeping. Okay.
Okay, the counsels concerning proper rest, Ellen White's manuscript says, make a habit not to sit up after 9 o'clock. Every light should be extinguished. The turning night into day is a wretched, health-destroying habit. And this reading much by brain workers, by being up late at night. In other words, what she's saying is executives that stay up late at night, it's very injurious to the health. And this was written when?
Over 150 years ago.
Yes. It calls the blood to the brain, and then there is restlessness and wakefulness. And this precious sleep that should rest the body does not come when desired. Regularity in eating and sleeping. The importance of the regularity in the time of eating and sleeping should not be overlooked, since the work of the building up of the body takes place during the hours of rest. In other words, when the body is repairing itself, it's during the time when you're resting. So it is essential, especially in youth, that sleep should be regular and abundant.
And also, I'd just like to add a little bit there. What it says here, scientists have not known this, but they know it now.
Mm-hmm.
They've figured it out in research that this is what happens at night when we sleep. As a matter of fact, I might as well take a little time here and just, we have time. In Time magazine, and it was September 22nd, 2014, it talks about at night when we sleep, the muscles are repaired, tears from injuries that happen during the time when you might exercise or lifting weights, those are repaired at night when we sleep, and we become stronger when we sleep. And we're going to touch on that a little later on. This information is only recently, maybe in the late 1900s, early 2000s was this information available. But here it's written over 150 years ago that our bodies are built up when we sleep. So information has been available, and some people knew about it. I know that my grandmother must have known something, because she was a stickler for sleep and other things dealing with remedies. One of the things she said, I'm not going to sit around and rust out. So in other words, she's going to keep moving, right? So we know movement is essential. So some of these things were known the further back you go, but I think we lost sight of them when we got into the newer age, and staying up all night, sitting all day for work, and all that kind of stuff.
Eating before bedtime. I really like this one. Many indulge in the pernicious habit of eating just before sleeping hours. The sleep of such is generally disturbed with unpleasant dreams, and in the morning they awake unrefreshed. A lack of energy is felt through the entire body, and in a short time the digestive organs are worn out, for they have not had time to rest. So what they're saying is even your organs need time to rest. They become miserable and wonder what has made them so. And the blood becomes so impure, the complexion becomes sallow, and eruptions will frequently appear. And you often hear complaints about frequent pain and soreness in regions of the stomach. And while performing labor, the stomach becomes so tired that some people just have to stop working and rest. Rest is needed by the stomach. The stomach must have careful attention. It must not be kept in continual operation. In other words, we can't eat continuously because the stomach needs to rest. Give this misused and much abused organ some peace and quiet and rest. After the stomach has done its work for one meal, do not crowd more work upon it before it has had a chance to rest, and before a sufficient supply of gastric juice is provided by nature to care for more food. So 5 hours at least should be lapsed between each meal, and that's what Dr. Peterson was saying. Wait at least 4 to 5 hours before you eat your next meal to give your stomach a chance to digest your food. So we have 15 tips for you that we're going to move through fairly quickly on how to make your rest very intentional. Tip number 1, prioritize and respect sleep. So you can manage your sleep by putting it on your to-do list. And your to-do list may have a lot of things listed, but you may want to add, I will go to sleep by 9 o'clock, or I may go to sleep by 10 o'clock. And also, those of you that have Fitbits, you can program sleep into your Fitbit, and your Fitbit will start telling you within maybe a half hour before it's time for you to go to bed. It's time for you to get ready for bed. It's time to go to bed. Good night, And so you can program that into the Fitbit. Arrange your schedules to accommodate your optimal individual sleep requirements. We have hectic schedules, Sometimes we're working on projects and we have to say, like last night I was working on this presentation. I went back to my cabin at 10 o'clock. I said, I'm going to bed. I was so exhausted I couldn't help but go and sleep anyway. But I did get up early in the morning to complete it, but I didn't get enough sleep. So what we have to do is we have to make it up in our mind that we're going to shut it down at a certain time, regardless of what we're doing. And those of you that are married or considering possibly getting married, if your spouse is going to sleep at a certain time that's early and you're still up, scurrying around and doing different things, you really should try to change your schedule and go to bed at the same time, and then possibly pick up those things in the morning, early in the morning, and continue things that you haven't had a chance to complete. Do not apologize for requiring interrupted sleep. I think what you have to do is you have to change the thinking of the people around you and help them to understand that you need to be in bed at a certain time so that they know not to call you late at night. They know that when it lights out, lights are out. And don't allow others to discredit your need for sleep. Well, you don't need that much sleep. I only get 3 hours or 4 hours. You don't have to go to bed at 9 o'clock. So don't let others do that, because everyone's body is different. We're all managing various types of things. Some people, it's, maybe an illness. Some people, it's just fatigue. You may have a busy or a more hectic schedule than someone else. So you have to not let others set the tone for what it is that you need to do and what you're trying to achieve.
Too many people have lost their reference point for feeling well rested. Instead, they muddle through the day oblivious to the fact that sleep deprivation is the reason behind their problematic professional relationships and their struggle to focus on assignments. Also, work accidents, auto accidents, it's like now, there was a time when, I don't know if you remember the time when an alcoholic could go into a bar and drink and be allowed to leave the bar, intoxicated. And then they made some changes, some rules where they had to, attempt to provide a ride for that person or designate, a driver who's not going to drink. And companies, I read in this book that has already been quoted from, called Sleeping Your Way to the Top, where it says, now we will prevent the alcoholic from getting in the car to drive drunk, yet businesses will allow sleep-deprived employees to drive home after they have done what shifts, double shifts, whatever, things that would cause them to be at risk on the highway. And highway accidents are now almost getting ready to surpass alcoholic accidents on the highway. The more sleep deprived the nation becomes. And that's kind of more or less a phenomenon here in the United States. Okay, it's not like that everywhere. And we're going to touch on that too a little later.
Many of you probably remember Tracy Morgan. There was someone that hit his car that had been driving a truck and who was sleep deprived, and he was severely injured.
Now here we're talking about athletes now. I know that I got this book. It was called An Athlete's Guide for Recovery. Rest, relax, restore for peak performance. That's all part of the title, right? And I started talking to my wife about it, and she said, I'm not an athlete. So anyhow, I said, look, this book is for everybody, not just athletes. And if we look at this information in these books, this is talking about succeeding. It's kind of geared toward professionals, people in business, but in the book it states it's not just for those people, it's also for the average person. Because you take, when you really look at things, What's the most important occupation that you could have? And it's in the home.
Parenting.
Parenting, and in the past, mothers have done most of the parenting. And so their jobs have, that's like the most important job. You really think about it, you're preparing another generation, to move into, the future and to do well. That parent has to be on the ball in order to be able to do the job that they need to do. And they need rest in order to do that, because the rest has been taken from them during those formative years with the children. But anyhow, we just want to talk here about just a little bit about athletes. It says 80% of the success is showing up well rested. And here, LeBron James, 12 hours of sleep. How many knew that? 12 hours of sleep.
Fellas.
Marty, she knows. She knows. Serena Williams, 10 hours. Tom Brady, who's familiar with Tom Brady? Tom Brady, quarterback for the New England Patriots, won more Super Bowls than any other quarterback in history. Now there's some shaky stuff going on up there in New England, but but nonetheless, you can't take away from his accomplishments. He's accomplished a lot in his time, even though they may have done a little cheating along the way. All right, you know what I'm talking about.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Well, allegedly. But you thing about the uninflated football and other things, stealing notes and all. But anyhow, he goes to bed at 8:30. He eats, drinks, sleeps football. And he does it because he wants to be able to play for a long time. And he has played longer than most already, and he's still playing. And he says what he eats and what he drinks, he does it because he wants to take care of his body so he can play football because he loves it so much. And we were talking, I think it was last night, and when I mentioned eat, drink, a Bible text came to our mind.
Yes.
The Bible text says, whether therefore you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. Well, Tom Brady is doing it all to the glory of football. But it's working for him, okay? So it's just more or less kind of giving us an idea on how important sleep is. Now, before I mention the next name here, I want to squeeze another name in between Tom Brady and Jeff Bezos. That name is Donald Trump. You know what Donald Trump has to say about sleep? He doesn't need it.
Right.
That's why he's. You see, right? You can tell.
Yeah.
But guess what? He can't tell. He can't tell. But anyhow, he says, he's always talking about how rich he is, right? And granted, he's a lot richer than I am, and he doesn't need any sleep, right? But this guy, Jeff Bezos, 8 hours a night for decades. How many know who Jeff Bezos is? Amazon. You know how much he's worth? He's worth 170 billion. Now compare that to 3 billion. Now I think I'd rather get my sleep. Forget Trump. All right. Now, how many people remember the name Andre Iguodala? He used to play for the 76ers, basketball, right? He was a good player. I mean, he was a real good player. He ended up out there in Golden State, and I guess he's happy about that. Because look at what Golden State has been doing, right, in the last 3 years. That's your team, okay. All right. But anyhow, while he has been out there, I think he's finally caught on to the fact that he needs sleep. And so what he did, he went to Stanford University Sleep Research Center, and they put him on a plan, and they just coached him into what he should do in order to improve his sleep, because he was trying, but he couldn't get. He maybe getting 4 hours. Yeah, 4 hours. He was getting about 4 hours of sleep a night, maybe 4 or 5 hours. And he says that once he started getting the proper amount of sleep, that it just took him to another level in basketball. And actually, I don't know if, we may be touching on this somewhere else in the presentation, but let me just tell you this. At Stanford University, their research has shown that not only does the sleep cause you to be stronger, it also causes you to be able to improve your motor skills, to be able to learn how to do things, to increase your proficiency, like in shooting the basketball for three-point shots and free throws and all of that. Learn how to, when you're learning how to play tennis and how to hold a racket and how to swing it. When you're sleeping, there's a process in sleep that causes you to improve on those things. You're trying to learn how to play an instrument like a piano or a violin or a guitar. While you're sleeping, you're still learning it and perfecting it while you're sleeping it. These are things that they have proven in research recently. It's been a while now. They've understood this, but it's more and more being studied and improved in how to even really take advantage of it when we're sleeping to improve in those skills. Here we have a person, her name is Arianna Huffington. How many are familiar with Arianna Huffington? She was a co-founder of Huffington Post. From what I understand, she left Huffington Post and she started her own business, and she is an advocate for sleep, and she still uses the platform of the Huffington Post and has in the past to write articles and to make them very understandable, reader-friendly on sleep, on how important it is. And in her new business, she even provides sleep rooms for employees. Now, you remember we went through the transition of sitting all day, and we've seen advertisements where companies are providing stand-up workstations for their employees. We've probably seen them advertised, and that was a long time coming. But here she's like probably a first, right? Providing little sleep rooms for her employees.
Yes, what happened to her was she fell due to being sleep deprived. She broke her jaw and she had to get stitches above her eye, and that really is what changed her.
That woke her up.
Yeah, that woke her up, literally.
A wake-up call. Scientists agree that runners need to log. Now, this is from a magazine called Running Times. It says scientists agree. As a matter of fact, Stanford University was key in this. It was mentioned in this article as far as some of the things that I just told you about athletes. It says agree that runners need to log sufficient time in the third and fourth stages of sleep, which Dr. Peterson talked about yesterday. That's when the human growth hormone is released, which helps build and repair tissue. And we're going to talk about that a little later also.
Tip number 2, determine your sleep needs. 7 to 9 hours is what research says that you should be taking, but you need to obtain as much sleep that you need to sufficiently rest your body. So you can give yourself a test. If you can survive without caffeine an 8-hour day, then you probably are getting enough sleep. I know myself, I was falling asleep yesterday during the day. I often fall asleep during the day. So rest is something that I'm really working on, but like my head will just drift off. And so if you get 7 to 9 hours and you find that is satisfying that problem, then you're probably getting enough sleep.
Yeah, when we were working yesterday, I'm waiting for a response. I happened to look over. I said,
yes.
But anyhow, it's something else that was coming to my mind in this same book, Sleep Your Way to the Top. They talked about microsleep. Are you familiar with the term microsleep? Microsleep is when you fall asleep, and you can even do it with your eyes open, anywhere from 1 second to 30 seconds, eyes open, right? And I was telling Theresa that we had a friend that came over to visit, would come over to visit, regularly, and she would be sitting there like, and everybody's trying to figure out what's going on, right? I think I think I read what was going on in this book. I really didn't know. I thought maybe she was having a siege spell, whatever. But anyhow, she probably had blanked out. In the book, it said that they had a test. They put a person, they taped their eyes open, right, not shut. They taped their eyes open, and they had a strobe light, and they said every time you see the strobe light, press this button. And so at first, they were hitting that button. They were hitting it right on time. Every time that light flashed, eyes taped open, right? And then all of a sudden, no response, and the strobe light came on. And then it got worse and worse and worse. And so they finally asked, well, what happened here? He said, the light didn't come on, but the strobe light did come on. So their eyes were open. They didn't see the strobe light, and so they did not press the button. So you can be sleeping with your eyes open. I know my brother here, Vietnam brother.
Mr. Carlton.
You probably know what it's all about, right? I remember on guard duty, standing up, eyes open, sleeping. So, when we're on guard duty, you're supposed to stay awake. You can be reprimanded for falling asleep on guard duty, but that just goes to show you how powerful the drive for sleep can become if you're sleep deprived. To fall asleep with your eyes open into a micro sleep.
Tip number 3, set a bedtime. Establish a bedtime or a bedtime window. The normal time to fall asleep should be 15 to 20 minutes. So strive to go to sleep between 9 and 10 p.m. And I think someone mentioned yesterday, asked a question about what if you work in the night or work the night shift. A night shift can be very hard on the body, and I think depending on your age, I know I work with a lot of nurses and physicians that work at night, and it is very difficult to adjust yourself and be healthy working these other shifts. Be protective of your sleep. Modern culture and technology are opposed to sleep. Resist the temptation to stay up watching late night shows and surfing the internet. And again, set an alarm clock for bedtime or program your Fitbit to tell you when to go to bed. And when I first programmed my Fitbit to go to bed at 10 o'clock, I mean, there were times at first when I knew it said go to bed, but I didn't. It took me time to work my way up to that. Schedule sleep. Schedule bedtime at the same time each night and schedule awake time at the same time. Research has showed that variable bedtimes, in other words, going to bed different times, can also produce fatigue, insomnia, and your ability to focus.
And another thing regarding something that the employees of Allegheny East are on this is something called Virgin Pulse. And it's Richard Branson. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Richard Branson. He's the owner of Virgin Pulse. He's another billionaire. But anyhow, one of the tips that they gave was that people who are consistent with their bedtime, going to sleep and getting up, get 40 minutes more sleep than those who are inconsistent.
And these are adult recommendations for sleep. We'll have the PowerPoint. We have copies of the PowerPoint, and you can take a look at those. Tip number 6, establish a pre-sleep ritual. Avoid plopping into bed exhausted after a hectic day. Implement an end-of-day routine to train your body and mind to disengage and go into sleep mode, such as taking a hot bath or play soft music when you're preparing yourself. If you do that every day at the same time, your body will be trained to know when it's time to go to sleep. Calm your mind. Put aside any work, arguments, or complicated decisions. You hear people say, I'll sleep on it. If you have a complicated decision and you're tired, it's probably better to wait until morning to think about it some more. Some people say my mind races at night when I try to fall asleep. If you maintain a to-do list around dinner time, in other words, all the things that are in your head and you are clouding you that you need to do, if you write them all down, around dinner time and then take them out of the bedroom, at least you will feel somewhat relieved that you know that those things are listed and they won't be neglected. But researchers also recommend to keep a pen and paper at the bedside in the event that you come up with an idea or a song or a solution in the middle of the night. And of course, recommendations for sleep. We also have masks here. Because sometimes you need to block out light. I know at camp I wear these because there is light coming in. And also, if you have pets, dogs and cats, please take them out of the bedroom because they snore, they make noise, they're very distracting, and they can also keep you up. Also, your sheets, I'm going to pass these around. This is a higher count sheet. I think it's up like 850. This is a lower count, 250, 200. And you can tell the difference between the two. If you get higher count sheets, they will be more comfortable for you in sleeping. So I'll pass these around. Also, with the mattress and the pillow, you should definitely sleep on the mattress before you purchase it to make sure that it is very comfortable. We talked about not eating or eat your last meal before bedtime. Tip number 8, avoid the clock. What does that mean? Good sleepers wake up 5 to 10 times per night, but you really don't remember waking up. But if you have a clock there, you will look at your clock, and that light from the clock will just make you wake up and stay up longer than what you normally would do. Usually those types of episodes, you will usually take about 15 seconds to arouse you and you go back to sleep. But when you look at the clock, it'll keep you up almost 30 minutes. So set the alarm clock, but turn it away from your visibility so that you can't see the clock. No electronics in the bedroom. This is a tough one. There should be no television in the bedroom. Now, I haven't had one in my bedroom in four years. It means less sleep for most Americans, but the light from the television and the sound, sometimes the volume goes up, or sometimes you wake up to loud screams, someone, the program is changed. And so try removing them for 1 week and evaluate your sleep quality. And these are all the electronics, computer, phones, television, they should all be removed from the bedroom. Now, not all-night radio or music, the researchers frown upon, again, because the volume goes up and down, but they do recommend that if you want to play soft music for about 35 minutes to help you sleep, that's a good thing to do. Limit bedtime reading. Now, there's 2 trains of thoughts on this one. It may cause you to stay up if you're going to the end of a chapter of a book and you can't stand the suspense and you're going to stay up and get to the end of the chapter. But the rule is somewhat relaxed because what they're saying is if you have catalogs or magazines or other mindless material that will help you fall asleep, use those instead. But if you're going to read at night, do not use a light bulb greater than 15 watts because that will, again, stimulate you for staying up. And if reading keeps you up, just keep reading outside of the bedroom. Go ahead. Use the bed only for sleep and intimacy. The bed and bedroom must be maintained as a stimulus value for sleep. So when you do other things in the bedroom, like eating in the bedroom, playing games with the children, watching TV, reading newspaper, it causes the bedroom to lose significance for sleep, and it leads to sleep problems. Don't make the bedroom an office. Avoid using the bedroom as an office, multi-purpose room, or a storage place for unfolded laundry, stacks of junk mail. These are things we do every day. We just bring these things up because the book is very adamant about these because these are just things that sometimes we don't even think about. But move these things out of sight, in the closet, keep the bedroom clutter-free. And then these are more recommendations. We talked about the sheets, pillows, and mattress. And this is really what the bedroom should look like. It looks very bland. And what I did when I first started to change my behavior, I would go and sleep in the guest room because nothing was going on in the guest room. So it was just the bed, the dresser. So then finally I was able to get my bedroom clutter-free. But I started sleeping in the guest room, and that's exactly what it looks like: a bed, the dresser, and a stack for linen. So stop trying to sleep. It says stop trying to sleep. Tip number 14, I go to bed and try to sleep. And they say that try causes you to feel your muscles tense, your respiratory rate, and possibly your heart rate increases. So sleep needs to be allowed. It can't be forced. So use prayer, meditation, or even counting sheep is effective, as studies have shown. But of course, say your prayers at night and settle yourself down.
Amen.
And then finally, tip number 15, avoid nightcaps. Alcohol is referred to as a nightcap because it implies that it can be used as a sleep aid, but it can cause sleep apnea in a person that normally doesn't have obstructive breathing. So it can cause you to skip breaths, is what it's saying. So a few drinks right before bedtime can create significant problems. And also nicotine, caffeine can also create problems. Also, open the window to get fresh air. Keep your entire house actually aired out, even in the wintertime, because the bedroom temperature at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, the fresh air helps you to rest. And that's another one of the principles of New Start.
Now, we already talked about this one. It's not just for athletes. It's not just for people in business. It's for all of us. This sleep thing is for everybody. I mean, the CDC wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't for everybody. We all, including children. Anyone have children here? We have to also remember more and more has been put in the child's schedule in later years than was in their schedule in prior years. And even now, scientists are making recommendations and starting to do something about changing the time that school starts in the morning, pushing it back a little longer. So, sleep research is helping us to learn how to live better, but some of us have known a lot about sleeping and have not applied it. And I know there are times when I could apply it better myself, but we all need to keep each other in prayer because this sleep thing is really, really important. As a matter of fact, I don't know if we put this in the PowerPoint, but here, this is the magazine. Look who's on the front cover. Let me leave that man alone. Even though he won't leave me alone, let me leave him alone. It's saying here, this professor, researcher on sleep, he says, I used to suggest that sleep is the third pillar of good health, along with diet and exercise. Says Matthew Walker, a professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley. But I don't agree with that anymore. Sleep is the single most effective thing you can do to reset your brain and your body for health. The most important thing. As a matter of fact, how many of you remember when, what was his name that would stream in information to us from California?
Dr. Youngberg.
Youngberg, yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Youngberg. Mm-hmm. He went through a whole ritual about the remedies. You know what the remedies are? They're around here: rest, water, exercise, nutrition.
Exercise, water,
fresh air,
sun, temperance, air, rest, trusting in the divine power.
He went through each one, and he saved rest for last. And he said, "Oh yeah, this is very, very important, very powerful, very, very good for you and beneficial for you. And he said kind of something similar for all of them. When he got to rest, he said, now this is the one that's going to give you the edge on all the others. It's going to give you the motivation and the energy in order to accomplish all the others, even trusting in divine power. Because how many times, I don't know if you ever fall asleep when you were praying. Anybody? You ever fall asleep at church? Okay, so I'm saying you need your sleep in order to even function spiritually, in order to be, adept spiritually and to grow spiritually. You need it. It's a physical feature that we all need. That's why God was so concerned about it. And it's not only physical rest that he's concerned about. He's also concerned about spiritual rest. And I don't know if you have ever heard in regard to what researchers have found about a day off. People need a day off every week. Mm-hmm. Shirley, are you familiar with that? A day off every week? Even in exercising. In the book that I told you about, in the book that I mentioned to you, The Athlete's Guide to Recovery, rest, relax, restore, and all that. In that book, there's a schedule for training. And the people that she trains, they take off every Monday. So I'm just dealing with, we need a day off, okay? Now, if you go to the Bible, you'll find that in the Bible, after the creation, God made the Sabbath day. And he set it apart and blessed it and sanctified it as a day that Adam and Eve would join in and commune with him on that day. And so I'm just trying to emphasize, you need a day off every week. And the world that we live in here, especially in the United States, is a 24/7 world. Okay, we weren't created to live that way. All right. Do you realize that you don't get stronger when you exercise? You're familiar with that if nobody else is. I was telling Theresa, I gave a presentation at the prison to the ladies one week and to the men another week. And somebody in the audience was familiar with this terminology here, that you don't get stronger when you exercise, or when you work, you get stronger when you rest. So anyhow, as we look at this verse here, Matthew 11:28, it says, "Come unto me, all ye that are weary and are burdened, and I will give you rest." You may be more familiar with, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." This verse is an invitation to us from God, from Christ, to take advantage of a promise that he is giving to us. He says, if you come to me with all of your problems, leave them at my feet, I will give you rest. You can look at it. He in this, if you look at the rest of the verses here, he talks about take my yoke upon you. He says, learn of me, for I am meek and lowly. He says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This yoke that he is talking about, if you can imagine, 2 oxen pulling a load, what do they have on their necks? A yoke. Mm-hmm. That yoke enables them to pull the load, and because there are 2 of them, it's easier on either one. Mm-hmm. Well, in this yoke that Christ is talking about, his yoke, his head goes in one side, and my head goes in the other side. And as he moves, I move. So he's saying my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So if you're having a struggle or a problem with anything, you know that you're in the wrong yoke. You know whose yoke you're in, right? Either in the world's yoke or the adversary's yoke. So we have to choose, is what we talked about earlier. We have to make a choice to take advantage or RSVP to his invitation and to join him and to take his yoke upon us, because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. Now, at this point, I'm going to tie in something from nature and something that we talked about a little earlier in this presentation. And it was the presentation where it says the athletes, the researchers know that they have to log in a certain amount of sleep during the day in order to be efficient. And at those stages, the sleep that they were talking about were the deepest stages of sleep. And it said during the deepest stages of sleep is when the growth hormone is released into the blood and goes throughout the body and begins while we're sleeping. The deepest stages begins to repair tissue. It begins to repair the tears in the tissues that Shirley placed in her muscles when she was lifting those weights. When she's sleeping, that's what takes place. When she's sleeping, when we're sleeping. All right, I'm just saying that, you know, but I'm just emphasizing how important it is, and you know how important it is. So during the deepest stages of sleep is when we become stronger. Not when we exercise, but when we sleep. And in this text, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. When we're in the deepest stages of rest in Christ is when we become stronger. He says, my strength, he says, my strength is made perfect. This is a text in his strength is made perfect in weakness. So we are weak, he is strong. We need to come to him with all of our troubles, with all of our problems, and he will give us strength. So when we're in the deepest stages of sleep, we get stronger, and when we're in the deepest stages of rest in Christ, we become stronger. I wanted to include something here. We didn't get to, we talk about the vacation. Yeah. Okay, that's the next one.
Sleep diary.
Okay. All right, well, we have a sleep diary here printed out for you that we'll, hand out at the end of the session. And also, we want to go to the next one, vacation. Do you know that the United States is the only modern country, an industrialized country, that does not mandate vacation time to companies? You work for a company and you have a good benefit package and you have a good number of vacation days, you're blessed because they're not forced to do it. But there are certain countries where the government actually says you have to give your employees so many days off every year paid. And those countries mostly are in Europe. And as a matter of fact, well, let me just I'll touch on this in a minute. Here's another article. I have so many articles in Time magazine, right? This article, how many are familiar with H&M? Retailer? It says, the Sweden-based retailer known for its stylish and affordable fast fashion. Ackley had worked in the industry since 2008, but the world he stepped into at H&M, he says, was nearly unrecognizable. Now, why do you suppose he says that? Because of their attitude toward vacation. It says that the company itself, it says, if you feel like you're happy and rested, you do better work. They recognize that. This is a European mindset. In this country, if you work long hours and you leave vacation days on the table, and you work for free, and you work while you're on vacation, that's a United States mindset, okay? And I just want to give you an idea on the productivity of some of these other countries. It says Luxembourg guarantees workers 35 paid days off. Norway guarantees 29 days. Switzerland, now that's not the only time that they get off. That's just they're guaranteed that, okay? Excuse me. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, it says, but the nations are these great nations are no random example. They happen to be the 3 OECD economies that finished ahead of the U.S. in 2013 in gross domestic product. And the reason is because they're, like this company H&M says that like 4 or 5 weeks are possible. That's when you're being hired. They tell you that. So I don't know what they start you off with, but I'm sure, you know, it's a lot better than the companies here in the United States do. And so these are some of the things, and it says Luxembourg is one of the richest countries like in the world. So vacation time is important, and that's when I want to go here and turn to this particular chapter in this particular book called Desire of Ages. And it's a text in the Bible that says, "Come ye selves apart and rest a while." The disciples were busy doing God's work. Busy. They said they didn't even have time, didn't take time to eat. They were so busy. And what did Christ say? Come ye selves apart and rest a while. And in this book it says, whatever a person's occupation, occasional change not only brings relaxation, but imparts vigor. So that when you come back, just like the articles are saying here from the vacation book, when you come back off vacation, the researchers are showing that your level of work is higher and better than those who don't take vacation. And it also says here, if we would listen to what Christ says, we would become stronger and more useful. If we would come aside and rest, if we would rest in Him, we would become stronger and more useful. So all of these strategies, this was over 150 years ago too, this information. So these things that researchers are just coming up with, it's not new. It's been around for a while. Okay, now.
And one of the things, too, that we talked about yesterday, which is really important, is that we have Fit4You available to you. And you know that throughout the year, you can look forward to coming here to get your rest, to shut your body down, to move away from your life. And so before you leave, I would recommend that you sign up or register for next year, because it's very important to have this type of facility and this atmosphere. It's very important to your, not only your daily rest is important, but this is very important to sustain your life. And I know myself, I probably would not be here or living if I did not come to Fit Camp every year, and I had not been coming here for 10 years. So it's very important, and I just want to thank everybody for listening. But we do have a diary so that you can document your sleep if you don't have a Fitbit. But I want everyone to think about, you know, their sleep patterns over the next 2 weeks, because you do have an opportunity here to go to bed early and try to catch up on your rest, get some rest, and try to monitor yourself. It's not going to be the same when you get back home, but at least if you start thinking about how you're going to set some goals for when you get back home and how you're going to make some adjustments, what you need to do, make a to-do list, whether it's to declutter your room or make a to-do list to start going to bed early, we have that time here for the next 2 weeks, and I want you guys to really think about how you're going to get that accomplished. And sign up for Fit4You for next year.
One more thing I wanted to mention. I don't want you to leave not hearing this, because this wasn't mentioned yesterday, and we didn't mention it yet today. How many are familiar with the lymphatic system? How many know that it doesn't really work unless you're moving? Okay. Now, I am going to read something to you that's talking about the lymphatic system, and then it's going to go on, it's going to start talking about another system. And I'll tell you the name of that system when I get to that part. All organs in the body use energy. And in the process, they spew out waste. Okay, most take care of the garbage. Most take care of the garbage with an efficient local system, recruiting immune systems like macrophages to gobble up the garbage and break it down, or linking up to the network of the vessels that make up the lymphatic system, the body's drainage pipes. The brain is a tremendous consumer of energy, but it's not blanketed in lymph vessels. So in other words, the lymphatic system doesn't go to the brain, right? Mm-hmm. So how does it get rid of its trash? If the brain is not functioning optimally, you're dead. It says here evolutionarily.
Dead in the
you're
water.
Dead in the water, okay? So there must be an advantage to exporting the garbage to a less critical organ like the liver to take care of it, says whatever his name is. Hard to pronounce that name. But anyhow, I wanted to tell you the system that gets rid of the debris from use and the energy consumption in the brain is called the glymphatic system. Starts with a G. Instead of the lymphatic, the glymphatic system. And it sends fluid into the brain, and as that fluid goes into the brain kind of compresses and squeezes out the debris that's from the work that the brain does throughout the day, and it sends it out of the brain and down into the lymphatic system, down further in the body. But it gets rid of it out of the brain. And if you don't get your sleep, it's not getting out of your brain. And it will cause the brain to prematurely age. It may even be, responsible for some of the dementia that's happening. We heard yesterday 4th stage diabetes, right?
Yes.
So anyhow, this is just some, do some research on some of these things. Learn, Leah has always said that you have to be a student for life because there's always something new. And with the way researchers are going today, you're going to continue to find, because the Bible says we are fearfully and wonderfully made in Psalms 39. So there's a whole lot going on that human beings will never understand. So the things that they're understanding more and more today, we need to be keeping up with them and staying on point, because we only come here and where we learn things once a year. So we need to be updated and learning all the time and be a student for life.
Okay. So rest must be intentional. Get some rest.
That's right.